Morning, Pathophys. It is Monday, April 6th, and we are about to start a new unit on the muscular system and muscular disorders. So basically what I have on the board behind me is a summary or a synopsis of an entire anatomy chapter for the muscular system. I'm going to go through this with you in a few minutes. I expect that you're going to take a peek at the notes, and I also expect that you'll ask me any questions that you have. I'm not going to fly through this, but I just do want you to understand that obviously we're talking about disorders, but we have to understand and make sure that you have a basic understanding of the anatomy and physiology of the muscular system before we get to that. And that'll be later this week. So you'll see the assignments start directing themselves in that fashion as we get into Wednesday and Thursday. You also have a project that's going to be starting. I'll post that tomorrow morning, Tuesday morning for you. And that's going to be on autoimmune disorders. This was going to be the acting project. This was going to be the one where you did a skit in front of the class. I'm going to decide between now and when I post it later on today how we're going to go about doing this, but we'll probably just go and do the traditional PowerPoint slides presentation. It seems to be working pretty well. I was really pleased looking at your skeletal disorder slides presentations. You guys did a great job on those. I wish I could have been there to interact with you in the classroom and ask you some of the questions that I was asking a few of you individually. Just a really nice job, and I appreciate the fact that you guys are understanding the value of what you're doing for Pathophys right now. So let's take a look at Chapter 8, talk about the muscular system. When we talk about the muscular system, first thing you have to understand is there's three types of muscle tissue in the body, three basic types. We have the skeletal muscle, or striated. It's called striated because it has a striped appearance under a microscope. We have smooth musculature, which is found in the digestive organs, the hollow digestive organs, the walls of the arteries. It's found in the uterus, urinary bladder, different places. It's involuntary function. And then we have cardiac muscle, which is obviously found in the heart, which is also involuntary function. The skeletal muscle being voluntary function. So those are your three basic types. And again, this is something that I would typically spend in a junior anatomy class half a period discussing when I just talk to you guys in 20 seconds. So make sure you understand the three basic types. They are listed in the notes that I posted for you. So if you have any questions, take a peek at those or just listen to this again. When we talk about skeletal muscle, which from this point on today in this lecture, that's what we're going to be discussing, skeletal muscle. There are three things that you need to understand about the skeletal muscle when we talk about functionality: the origin, the insertion, and the action. The origin of the muscle, any skeletal muscle, whether it's your biceps brachii, whether it's your gluteus maximus, the origin is the fixed point of attachment. In order for this is physics here too. In order for a muscle to work, it has to have leverage, has to have something that's connected to produce work. So that origin is the fixed point of attachment. On the other side of the muscle, we go through what's called the body or the belly of the muscle, go to the other side, there's another point of attachment. That point of attachment is going to be what moves when the muscle contracts. It's going to move whatever it's connected to, whether that be another muscle, whether it be the skin or a bone in most cases. That's called the insertion. So the origin is the fixed point of attachment. The other side of the muscle is the insertion, and that's the point when the muscle contracts or shortens, it's going to produce movement. That's what's going to, the skeletal muscle, how it works. The action of the muscle is the specific work that's performed by that. It might be for something like, again, we'll go to the biceps brachii. I think it's one that we all understand. That action of that muscle is going to be to flex that joint. And these are all the terminology or the terms that we talked about as far as anatomical movement. I know you did that last year. Again, something you might want to review again. Talk about flexion and extension, abduction and adduction, supination and pronation, elevation and depression. These are all motions produced by the muscles, and they become part of the action, the specific action of that muscle. How do we make it very specific per muscle? We talk about what it elevates. We talk about what it flexes. For the biceps brachii, it flexes the forearm. All right. So again, understand that terminology as well, especially when we look into disorders at the end of the chapter. What is the microstructure of a skeletal muscle fiber? That's something you probably are going to need to look at some diagrams on your own. I could post some things on Google Classroom, and I may do that, but it's something I expect you to know. So when you look at a muscle fiber or a muscle cell, that's what they're typically called, or fibers, they have a structure that is fibrous, hence the name fiber instead of a cell. It's a long thread-like structure. When we break that down, if we open that up, the outside membrane has a specific name. It's called the sarcolemma. So once we split the sarcolemma open, what you see on the inside are a group of what are called myofilaments. Myofilaments are also small thread-like structures that are obviously smaller than the overall cell, but that's what the cell itself is composed of. Those are the functional working units. When you break each of those down and look at them again under a microscope, you're going to see some jagged lines, and they form what are called Z lines because they actually look like the letter Z. Inside or in between each of those Z sections is called a sarcomere. That is the functional contracting unit of a muscle fiber of your entire muscular system. The sarcomere is composed of two types of different myofilaments, actin and myosin. Those are muscular contracting proteins. Actin and myosin will bind together when initiated by a nerve impulse, and some other things have to happen too. We'll go over those shortly, but they bind together and they shorten, and that's called the sliding filament theory. They actually slide on each other. They shorten as they do that. Now, in order for that to happen, obviously, you have to have a nerve impulse. It's going to stimulate the muscle fiber to contract, and then some other things chemically are going to have to occur. When that nerve impulse goes to the sarcolemma, and there's openings in the sarcolemma, that membrane called T-tubules, they're shaped like the letter T, that nerve impulse is going to cause calcium to be released. This is why calcium is so important. I asked a couple questions about calcium in the bones last chapter, and a lot of you guys hit the nail right on the head. Calcium is not just for forming the matrix of the bones, it's also needed for muscle contraction. So that's why we have to have hormones like PTH, which release calcium from the bones so it can be used for the functionality of the muscular tissue. Anyways, once the calcium is released, it allows actin and myosin to bind together. Naturally, when your muscles relax, they're not bound together. So when they bind together, at this point, they can be prepared to contract, but we need one other element, not element's probably not a good word to use there, one other factor or substance that's going to allow that to happen, and that's ATP. You have to have energy for the muscle fiber to contract. I've had students before get confused, say, well, isn't it the nerve impulse that causes the muscle to contract? Yes, indirectly, but that's just the instruction. That's just telling the nerve or the muscle fiber to contract. You actually have to have the chemical process of energy being released inside of the muscle fiber for that muscle to contract. So, kind of short summary of what happens. Nerve impulse hits the muscle fiber, goes to the sarcolemma through the T-tubules, calcium's released, actin and myosin bind together, ATP is broken down at the same time, which allows the motion or the contraction to occur that provides the energy for the muscle contraction. That's a short summary of a very complex process, but that's basically what happens. So when you look at how does it work, we talked about calcium. ATP obviously supplying the energy. Calcium allows actin and myosin to bind together, and actin and myosin are the two proteins that are going to grab onto each other to form the muscle contraction or produce the muscle contraction. So again, quick summary, beginning of the chapter. I'll have some more specific questions over the next few days. You'll be able to get started on your autoimmune project tomorrow, so start thinking about if you want to do some research between now and tomorrow morning. Autoimmune diseases you'd like to research. Look online. Maybe there's somebody in your family that has one. I mean, they range from things as non-life-threatening as psoriasis to things as horrible as multiple sclerosis, ALS, diabetes is in there as well. So there's a number of different things that you need to look at, or can look at rather, for autoimmune diseases. So take a peek at that, answer the question that I gave you, and I'll talk to you guys in some form or another tomorrow morning. Have a good day.